Okay, so we're live. I have two people here with me, two very special people, um, Amy and Karen, and they're going to talk about. I don't know how many of you here are familiar with family court and gee, I don't even know if I'm saying the right thing, guys. Do you have anything to do with DCP&P? Do you deal with them or work with Child Protection Services in your role as a CASA?
Yes. Yep.
You
We will
do.
be working with them. Yep.
Okay. So both of these ladies here have just gone and become, it's a certification. Is that correct? To become a CASA?
Yeah, it was a 6-week training course. It would go for 3 hours a week, and then we would have homework each week. And then at the end of that, we observe a few different cases in the courthouse. And then the judges, we take an oath and they swear us in.
Okay. So how do you get appointed to a child or a case? How does that happen?
So we are still waiting to be appointed to a case. They said that, within the next week or two, we should probably hear something. But they get the cases from the judge will, in their orders, they'll say that they want this child to have a CASA, and that will go to the CASA office. And then they look through all of the CASA volunteers and see who they think might be, a good fit for them. And then they'll reach out to us and tell us about the case, ask us if we want to take it on, and then that would be our child that we work with.
So do you only have one child in a period of time, or can you have several? How does it work?
Most of the time, we'll only have one, but if it's like a family, then we might have, a sister and a brother, we might have two. But for the most part, we'll usually only have one child.
Okay. And
It,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's one case at a time, and it could be, like Danielle had mentioned, it could be multiple children per family. But the other thing I want to go back to is that, not Danielle, Amy mentioned that in the post that you had publicized this on, that we were going to be coming on tonight, she mentioned that it is foster children. We don't go into homes where the children,
Right.
and a report has been called in. This is after they've been removed from the home. They're in a foster or resource family setting. And then we're there to come in to observe the children in their resource home setting. We interview the bio parents, family connected, the schools, doctors. We then have access to all the child's records so that we can have all the information to know that when we're observing him, to take all those things into account.
Right. So let me ask you this. So a child has to have been removed from their family and put in foster care, and you're in place to make sure everything goes smoothly in the foster home is like to advocate for the child in foster care. Is that right?
Yes. So, I mean, every child has a caseworker from DCP&P. We are kind of like the caseworker, except for the caseworkers, they have, tons of cases, tons of kids that they're working with. We only get one case, so we are able to focus all of our attention on that child, on that case. So sometimes we might see things that the caseworkers don't. And we strive to stay on that case from the very beginning until it is finished. That way the child has some kind of consistency, someone constant in their life, that they can build a relationship with, especially if they're bouncing from, different foster home to different foster home. And they have different caseworkers and different therapists and everything. We try to be like the one constant in their life. And like Karen said, look at everything that they have going on.
Right. And so let me ask both of you, I don't know who wants to answer first. What made you decide you needed to do this? Did something happen in your life, or have any of you been involved in the foster care system prior, or you just?
Amy, you go first.
Me first?
Yeah.
So for a couple of reasons, I wanted to do something. I didn't know what CASA was. I didn't know anything about it. So I had just been Googling, how can I make things better for kids? What can I do? And this came up. But a few things for me. One is that my sister has been fostering for about 3 years. And she's had at least 12 kids come in and out. And their stories are always heartbreaking. And a lot of times in my personal opinion, I would feel like everyone wasn't doing what was best for in the interest of the child. And that really bothered me. And it just, kind of lit this fire in me, like, me wanting to change things. That, and also because of your grandson, Corey. Because I blame, I kind of blame myself, because I feel like I should have seen the signs. I should have known. But I didn't. Anytime I saw something that, I don't know, was questionable, I would ask Chris, and he was very convincing. He was never, afraid to answer my questions. So that it didn't seem suspicious to me. He always had an explanation, always had a reason. And it seemed like, okay, that might be true. That might be fitting. And so Corey is a big, big part of why I did this.
Right. I just want to say you should never think that you missed something, because as well as I know how convincing Chris is and was. So I doubted things for a long time with him, because he was very
charming.
What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I mean, and I kept telling myself, oh my gosh, he comes from this great family. His dad's retired law enforcement, blah, blah. We know what that means now. It doesn't mean anything, but so never think that there was anything that you missed, because quite frankly, there were people there that actually knew what was going on and did nothing. So, you're not one of them. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm just sick. Okay. So Karen, what was your reasoning for wanting to do this? What is your experience, or have you had any experience with foster care?
No, I never did have any experience with foster care, but I know the first child who came out of foster care system that touched my heart was my good friend Dawn's son, Daniel. She adopted him at 8 years old. It was supposed to be just an emergency weekend situation that he had to be taken out of the home he was in. And he never left her house from that day on. He's now 29 years old. So, and Dawn actually, through that experience, Downeyside Adoption adopted Daniel. And now she is the president of the adoption agency in Lavalette. And they do adoptions all over the place, but it's a Franciscan-based adoption agency that does wonderful things for kids. So to see that success story gave me a positive prior to Corey's death, which I only learned about in 2022. And when I did, and I knew that there was an upcoming memorial service at the cemetery, my daughter Faith and I went together. And just from being there, something about Corey just drew me in. And I wanted to be a part of the collective voice to speak up, be a support throughout his trial, which I tried to be, and a presence when I could be, along with my sister Melinda came a few times. And from that, I couldn't let it go. I'm just so incredibly enraged at the things I can't control. So I tried to focus on the things I could. After Corey's murder, this little girl, Maggie, 2 years old, went to go live with her grandmother, who had to remove her from her daughter because of the lack of care, the abuse, and the negligence. When my friend picked little Maggie and her sisters up, she retained care of them for 18 months, and no one ever came to say, we want our children back. So she had care of the kids. She got a house to support them, care for them, meet all their minimum standard care of level and needs, the things that we learned that you need to look for, and beyond. 3 little girls, they were 7 and 4 and Maggie was 2 when she died. And she was murdered by her mom and her boyfriend. So the girls were picked and taken to foster care. Her older sisters went into foster care. And it was only at that point. So Liz had the grandkids for 18 months. Her daughter came back and said, we're coming to get the kids. Liz had no legal standing. The kids were moved 6 hours away. And she called child services. She called the police and she called the school system 3-4 times a week. She did, her sister did, and her 87-year-old mother did. Nobody responded until they called her October 21st to say Maggie was dead and the girls were put in the foster care system.
Wow.
The girls in the foster care system, thank God, really, for the care they got there, and there was a CASA involved. This was the first time Liz, who had dealt with her daughter's children being taken away, this is the first time. First, they were in Tennessee. There was no CASA. There was no follow-up care. There was no second set of eyes. And she was able to take the kids from Tennessee to Pennsylvania, take care of them for 18 months, lose any rights she didn't have. 3 months later, Maggie dies. And it was a different system the way this particular part of the state was dealing with it. It wasn't Tennessee. I don't want to say the state, and I don't want to say her last name. But that CASA made the difference in saying, these girls need to be with family. They recognized the tragedy. They recognized that the girls were privy to Maggie's death. It was clear that they never should have been taken from the grandmother. And now the grandmother had to go and fight for her rights to get the rights to the older 2 girls. So they were in the foster care only for 2 weeks before she got the temporary right. And now she retains the full right and custody of the girls. They had to get the 2 inmates to release custody. So that's pretty much what, over the top for me. I almost had a complete meltdown myself in October because I just can't take hearing about one more of these children. But again, they were not used in foster homes. Foster home was actually a good escape for them. And Corey might have been better off if they temporarily even put him there while they investigated his father. But I don't want to say too much about that. I don't know how much I can say.
You can say pretty much anything because
Yeah.
I've said it all before.
Okay.
Real quick, I just want to say hi to somebody in the chat, Janae, and everybody has a story to tell. Jamie, Mindy, anybody I missed. And there was somebody in here before. I don't know what his name is now or her name, Israel or something. And he typed something. It's either not English or he's bored with the conversation. And I just want to invite him to get the fuck out. You don't have to be here. You're not doing me any favors. You can go. Nobody's making you stay, Israel or whatever your name is. You can go. Anyhow, I don't play that game because I was kept quiet for the whole years, the 4 or 5 years that we went to trial, and I'm not being quiet anymore. So if somebody says something I don't like, I'm going to tell them about it, and I don't have to put up with it. So anyway, somebody had asked in the chat before, are you only in a certain county, or I don't know if I asked you that, or is it?
We are Monmouth County, but depending on the need, we could be a little outside of Monmouth County too.
Okay, so depending on if they happen to have a case that might not be too far away, or
yeah, but it's in Ocean County or something, then we might get assigned to that.
But Rebecca, there are CASAs in every county in New Jersey. We are trained through Monmouth and really specific to Monmouth, but if our case gets moved, we still tend to that case. But everyone should be able to find out information about their, CASA of Monmouth, CASA of Ocean, Passaic, etc.
Right. I guess like I wasn't familiar with it because Corey was never removed from the home. So we didn't really, I guess, have any need to know what it was all about. I wonder though, if even children who are in a home and there's suspected abuse, like in Corey's situation, who's the advocate for them there? Because we all know that DCP&P failed.
That's what I said. I think it was yesterday that I said I wonder if there's some way to see about getting CASAs involved more with kids, just because they're not removed from the home. There was still some kind of, suspected abuse or something that brought DCP&P, to their house. So I wonder if
Right.
there's some way that we can get involved before it gets to that level of, having to be, for the child to have to be removed.
Right.
Even if it's not, even if it's not founded, the claims of abuse, at least, keep the CASA there for a little bit to, build a relationship with the child and, see how things go. And, even if it's for a month or two or something, I wonder if there's a way that we could kind of get that incorporated.
Right. Yeah. That would be, that could have helped Corey a lot if that was something in place. But
I just want to add to that, especially when the child is living with their abuser, to be a one-stop touch and go, to have that second set of eyes, like Amy said, to come in and be able to observe and see the cues that maybe aren't being spoken, because no child is going to say, yeah, you're right, that my dad did just clock me one. It's much of what's not spoken because of the fear and intimidation, even when the abuser's not around. But never mind if you live with them, there should be a more foolproof system, like a 1, 2, 3 step before they just allow the child to still reside at home with the potential abuser. I know I'm beating it.
right. We're trying to make changes by making what we're referring to as Corey's Law. And so that would be part of, apparently kids aren't supposed to be questioned in front of the parent, like when the police go for a welfare check or something. But unfortunately, Corey was questioned and photos were taken. And guess who was in the photos with Corey?
His dad.
Right. So, do you think he's going to say anything?
No way.
He didn't even
Right
want to
there.
say anything when Chris wasn't around.
Ex-
So why would he say something when he's right next to him?
Right. And, so when I had, because trust me, I have called anybody and everybody in the last several years. And when I called Barnegat Police to inquire how these welfare checks and these things happen, and the person I spoke to told me, and I said, well, that's funny because that's not how it happened in my grandson's case. And he said, well, so what do you think went wrong? And I said, well, obviously, Corey didn't reveal to the officers while they were there, but how many kids would? So though we have to change how we do these things. So part of Corey's Law and what we kind of presented to our state senator was, if the cops are called to do a welfare check and they see bruising, and which they did see with Corey, automatically DCP&P should be called, and none of this 24, 48 hours bullshit. We'll get out and check it out. No, you need to come now, and a cop has to sit there. I don't care how busy you are. You need to stay there until somebody comes and figures out what they're going to do, whether it be removing the child from that home until they do an investigation, whatever they need to do. And, I've had people say, oh, you would have wanted Corey to be removed from his home and go to foster care if that meant saving his life. Yeah, sure. I don't think it would have come to that. Had they removed him, he would have been placed obviously with us. I'm certain of it. But, they have to, the hospitals, the police, the prosecutor's office, the court system, everybody has to work together. And they tell you that there's protocol in place, but I don't think everybody's following it. And I think just like with any job, you get lazy, I guess is a good word, and you might decide not to do something, or perhaps maybe you saw that child with the father out in public in the town that you live in and you saw them playing on the football field and you thought everything looked great. I don't know. I'm just throwing scenarios out there, but you know, things have to change. Hospitals have to have,
Mhm.
you know, these child abuse experts have to be on call 24/7, not Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. And that's an issue that we ran into with Corey's situation. The abuse expert wasn't available at the time that Corey was at the hospital the night before.
He should have been held there until they were.
And they all knew that Corey was to be returned to Chris. He was supposed to be with Chris that evening.
Mhm.
And he was out, well, he was at home entertaining one of his many online hookups. I don't know if this is one that he paid for, if she paid him, but anyway, it doesn't matter. He was entertaining that night and didn't want Corey to come back home at that point. So he didn't answer Brianna's phone calls. And then, of course, you know, she had to drop him off the next day. But everybody, the hospital, DCP&P was in contact with the hospital. They knew Corey was going back to Chris either that evening or the next day. And nobody stepped up and said, oh, maybe we better not do that, you know?
I think also when they were
So-
when the cops were interviewing Corey and Chris was right there and everything, I think that, like we were saying earlier, Chris is so charming and convincing, and he comes across as friendly, like just like hey, like he talks so kind of naturally and like makes you feel like oh, you know, he's a nice guy, we're friends kind of thing. And I think maybe that also played a part in why the cops didn't separate them, because he came across as so like, this guy wouldn't hurt a fly. Like that's the way that he
And
talked to people is like
also,
he tried to make people feel comfortable with him.
right. And he also likes to drop the, you know, his dad is the retired state trooper. I'm so sick of talking about that and hearing it. But he would say that all the time. And he would always throw out there his master's degree. And, you know, when you hear those things, you think, well, this guy is perfect. You know, he's the perfect person, but
he's not the kind of guy that, you know, does this. So I think that because of that, I think that's probably played a part in why the cops didn't separate Corey and him when they were questioning him and taking pictures, because Chris got them to let their guard down and took advantage of it.
Right. So let me ask you guys, both of you, if you're on a case, right, either one of you, and you don't have to answer this, right? And this child is in foster care and you think something's not right, what do you do? What are you trained to do?
Something's not right in what way? In the home that they're in, like in the foster home?
In the home that they're in, maybe you don't feel like they're being cared for in the right way.
Depending on what we are seeing or what we're suspecting, we get back in our car. We're not supposed to really, I guess, kind of make a scene in the house. We get back in our car, maybe drive down the street. And then we, depending on the severity of it, we would either call our what do they call, our mentor or our case manager. And then if it's not something super serious or we're not sure about it, we would call them. And then they would tell us, you know, the next steps we should take. If it was something like this child is being abused, or we saw, you know, there were drugs on the table or something in there, something like serious, then we would do the same thing, get back in our car, but we would call the either, depending on it, was either 911 or the abuse hotline.
Right. You guys are really putting yourself at risk. If you think about it, because you never know what you're walking into. Even approved foster homes, you never know, right? I mean, we hear horror stories about foster homes too. So I have to say, I don't know if I could do it on a volunteer basis, if I would want to put myself at risk. You don't know what you're walking into, you know?
It's true.
We have been assured by our administrators that they wouldn't send us into anything. And there haven't been any incidents, but, you know, to your point, it is true. I mean, you have to be cautious and careful, but they have been, for the most part, removed from the dangerous situation. We're not there in suspicion of the foster care or resource family. We're there to see, to keep tabs on the child. And our goal is reunification with the family. So we're just making sure as we're visiting and interviewing the child, the bio family, if there's a chance at reunification, what resources the parents may need to help get back on track so they can be reunited with their child, and make our suggestions to the judge. Yes, the child seems like the basic minimum sufficient level of needs are being met. The child is being prioritized, and they are, functioning in the resource home. So they're in a safe place while mom and or dad get their act together. And then we reassess in 30, 60, 90 days. We see the child once a month at least while that's being reprocessed, and then we revisit it again. But what you were saying, like in that case, if we had gone into the home, if they had CASA in the case to say, hey, listen, Brianna just called and we need to send somebody over to check on Corey over at his dad's house. If we went and we saw him recoiling or even shrinking away or in the slightest bit uncomfortable, and it doesn't take, I don't think, two and two too much to put it together when you're there and you see it in action in a hot scene that we're called into. Not family or a girlfriend that wasn't looking for it and he went out of his way to hide it from. But I'm saying we're being brought in specifically because we know something's going on. We come into the residential home and we see it. Our recommendations could be the very things that help the judge to say, you know what? Corey needs to be put in a foster home until we can go through this stuff and figure out if mom is the best place, because we found out dad's not in our investigation. It would have been the best thing for him to be put in a foster home until they put him back in your care. And I really, Amy, you say it like we wish we could do something. And here's Rebecca, trying to get Corey's law enacted. That should be a component of it. Push for there to be volunteer CASAs in residential homes in Corey's name. That could be the mom, the bulldogs, the guard dogs that are coming around, sniffing around, making sure that every T's been crossed and every I's been dotted.
Also, what you were saying, Rebecca, about like it might not be, what if it's not a safe environment that we're going into? During our training, they also said that, if we don't feel safe, we could always schedule our visit with like the caseworker from DCP&P or something like that. We can also, if they're making it difficult for us to see the child, or if we just don't feel safe, we can always schedule visits with them like while they're in daycare or at school or something, so that we don't have to walk into that house.
Right. Somebody had a question. What would you do if you feel a DCP&P worker is biased against bio family and pushes adoption with foster home and doesn't rule out all relatives?
So our reports, we're not allowed to have any biases in our report. We're not allowed to use any of our opinions, our feelings, what we think. We have to use all facts. So even if the caseworker, the DCP&P caseworker is, clearly biased in their reports, the judge is also reading our report and only seeing facts. And if the biological parents are doing everything that they're supposed to do, and there's, they're on track, they're in treatment, or they're, going to whatever meetings that they need to, things like that, then the judge, just based off of the DCP&P's recommendations that they should go to stay in the foster home, I don't think that the judge is going to automatically just say, okay, they're going to get adopted, because the parents are doing what they're supposed to do, and their unbiased report isn't showing anything negative towards the parents. Then I think the judges that we have, at least, they seem to be very, very good, very fair, and they don't seem to take crap from anyone.
How much do they let you guys know about the child and the case? Do you get to know every detail of what happened? Unfortunately, right? Probably more than you want to know sometimes.
Yeah, so we'll be able to see DCP&P's reports. We can talk to the caseworker. We get all of their reports from like the doctors, from school. We can go ourselves and in person and talk to their teachers, talk to the principal, talk to their doctors. We can talk to everyone involved in their case. Their biological parents, we can talk to their foster parents. Our job is to gather information. So if people involved in the case ask us for information, the foster mom asks us, what's going on, we can't share anything. If we keep it to ourselves, we write it in a report and we give it to the judge. So we just gather, we interview, we read, we research, we gather everything, and then that goes into our report for the judge.
Right. So what do you think from here? Do you think you'll go further than this? Do you think you'll go into social work, either one of you, or is this where it stops for you, this volunteer?
I'm hoping that this turns into, I'm hoping this is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg, because I'm very passionate about this, and I don't know what the next steps are or what even else there is out there, but I'm really excited to get started on my first case and, see where that takes me. And, I hope that I can make a bigger impact than, what I'm meaning to do right now. I hope it gets bigger.
Yeah. For me, I like the volunteer aspect because as I condition my temper and my people skills, it's better for me not to be in a designated career position that I could lose my income. So not to say that, I don't want to sound like I'm some kind of recluse, but I mean, I'm learning to, what I call our administrators at CASA, I'm learning to respect the red tape. And I like the volunteer capacity. And there are people who've been doing this for 20 years. A couple of the girls, one of them that we met at the swearing in she was a CASA volunteer who became a judge. Oh, wow. Plenty who already are. Some are attorneys, some are addiction specialists. There's a nice variety of the people who are volunteering, but I'd be happy just getting my feet wet here and learning about the system, because I think as I learn it, I'll learn how I can help affect change in it. So I'm really looking to.
I see in the chat, my friend Alan, I've known for a lot of years, he was in the foster care system when we were kids. And I just had this conversation with him, I think it was yesterday. And I remember his caseworker from DCP&P, it was DIFUS back then. I remember the guy's name because this guy was so involved with Alan. This wasn't just a job and a paycheck. He cared. And I was telling Alan, I'm like, I don't think that happens too much anymore. I think these social workers, case workers, whatever they're calling themselves, are not in it because they want to help now. It's just a job, or whatever. But it's funny that I can remember someone's caseworker from 40 years ago. Who would remember that, right? But the guy made an impact because he was there for him. He would pick him up and take him to the store and get him things that he needed. And I just found out yesterday when we were talking that he would pick him up in his own personal vehicle because Alan was a teenager and he was embarrassed by the state car with the big emblem on the side. So, I mean, this was a guy who really cared, I don't know how many of those still exist in DCP&P. We didn't have any, that's for sure.
When we were in court the other day, I'm not sure if she was a caseworker or if she was a law guardian, but this one woman, she really, really cared. The way that she was talking, like you could hear her voice like shaking, and she was so upset by what she had seen and with the case that she was working on, and you could tell she really, really cared. So there are caseworkers and people involved that do care. But I think with anything, unfortunately, any job, you're going to get some people that don't care as much as they should. But there are some good ones still.
I think
I
red tape, they get caught up in the red tapes. Like nurses, they're there, they love caring for people. They get caught up in all the admin stuff, and now it's not a labor of love.
Right. Yeah. We have in the chat, a retired DCP&P worker, an actual legitimate social worker. She actually had a degree, didn't work at Home Depot or at the casino. And I'm not knocking those jobs, but unfortunately, Corey's last caseworker, I don't know if he was a valet or something at the casino or something. That was his last job before taking the job at DCP&P. So I always like to say that Mindy was an actual social worker. She had a degree. And I'd like to say, just having known Mindy for these last 4 years, almost 5, I think she's one that cared. I could say that if she were on Corey's case, I think Corey would still be here.
Mm. Wow.
It's just, we had one good caseworker. And as soon as Chris's family realized that she wasn't buying into their bullshit, they had her replaced. They said that she was biased and had her removed from the case. And then it just went downhill after that, unfortunately. But yeah, the whole CASA thing, I really think there needs to be some kind of, I think when DCP&P is involved, even if the kids are still in the home, they need a CASA. They need somebody there to be their voice, because maybe they're afraid to, not maybe, I mean, I know Corey was afraid to say a lot. And maybe if he had someone like one of you, coming to see him, he would get comfortable and feel like he could have said more. And
Mm.
I think that's something that we need to really think about. These kids need somebody even while they're living in their family home,
Absolutely.
because, it's not always the safest place, no matter what it looks like to everyone else. But
Can
I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add.
Good. I'm glad. Perfect timing. I want to just read off a couple of statistics real quick. Our work is important. There's an estimated 3.3 million referrals alleging cases of abuse or neglect to CPS agencies, Child Protective Service or agencies. 3.3 million across the country every year are reported. 61.9 of these referrals are screened in for further investigation. And overall, the CPS agencies across the United States estimate that 702,000 of these children were victims of abuse or maltreatment going by the year 2009. 80% were due to neglect, 18% were a result of physical abuse, 9.5% due to sexual abuse, 7.6% were the result of emotional abuse. 1,770 children under the age of 18 die annually as a result of abuse and neglect. More than 80% of those kids who die are under 4 years old of age. And in more than 87% of all those cases together, the perpetrators of abuse or neglect are parents or relatives of the children in their own home.
That's way too many.
It's staggering.
Something has to change, and I don't know when that's going to happen.
And child abuse laws didn't start until 1875 when a missionary brought a case of little Mary Ellen Wilson. She was only 11 years old. She had been so badly abused, a missionary brought her to Henry Berg, the founder of the ASPCA, and they had to go by animal cruelty laws to save this girl's life. The man said this is despicable, and he started the first law, or the first order for this, in New York Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children in 1875. And because of that law and because of his protection, that little girl lived to 92 years old and died in 1956.
Wow.
Animals had more rights.
Yeah. It's very odd that sometimes people who harm animals get more time in prison or jail than people who harm their own children. And that has to change. I think we should have the death penalty still in New Jersey. I don't know why we don't, because nobody can make it make sense to me that if you harm a child or kill a child, why do you get to live? There's no reason. To me, I think that, I've said it before, they should be, whoever does, whoever commits the act of murder should be murdered in the same way that they killed that child. I believe that. And I'll always say it. I've been very vocal about that. And I know a lot of people don't share my, view on things, but that's okay. They don't have to.
If death by
But,
execution were the price you pay for hurting a child, a lot less children would be getting murdered and beat up and raped and trafficked.
right.
Making
If the
it
laws are strict, I think, they would
think
maybe, right. Yeah. At this rate, I mean, there are people who have done longer jail sentences for drug charges than some that have harmed or murdered children. And that is crazy to me, but I don't know how we fix that either. There's a lot of things I know we need to fix. I just don't know how to fix half of them, more than half. But, I just think that having, like the role that you two are taking, I think if we could have that in the home, that would be helpful. I think that we shouldn't wait until the kids have to be, things are so bad, the child has to be removed before they're given someone to be their voice, We shouldn't wait until things are that bad, I mean, that's just my opinion. And I'm sure other people probably feel the same, but I don't know how to change that. And that is something that should maybe be worked into what we're calling Corey's Law, which is still, I'm learning a lot. Things don't happen overnight like I want them to. Like Corey's Law, I mean, this could go on. It's not going to happen next week. It takes time for everything to happen. But, I don't know how much time we have, because every day you hear about another kid dying. I mean,
But
maybe it was always happening and I just didn't know about it because it hadn't happened to me, and maybe I just didn't pay much attention. I don't know. But
Is there any way to kind of expedite the process because of how many kids are, this is happening to? Is there any way that the process can be expedited so that we can get it into place quicker we don't lose more kids?
I'm sorry. I was reading a comment and lost track. What did you say?
I said, is there any way to get this Corey's Law somehow expedited, since, it's a long process, and in this process we're losing so many kids. So is there any way that it can be kind of expedited so that hopefully more kids don't have to go through this?
Not to my knowledge. I have called, I've inquired, like, where's it at? What, how long are we going to wait? How many more kids have to die? And I'm told the same thing. These things take time. I'm getting used to hearing that, for several years. But anything else you want to add to this topic? I mean, I hope you'll come back on and tell us. I know you're not going to be able to tell us about your cases, but I want to know how you feel 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, when you've been doing this a while, how how you're feeling about it. And I'd love to have you both back to talk about that.
Absolutely. And I told you earlier that I spoke with CASA, and they said that, they would be willing to come on. Their directors and case managers and stuff would be willing to come on if you want them to. If you have any questions or want any information or anything, they'd be happy to come on with you.
That'd be great. And maybe we can inquire, like, maybe they can help us figure out how we can get this kind of program in place for the kids that are still living at home.
Yep.
Maybe that's the start, right?
That's my hope.
But I'm going to go on and talk about other nonsense. I don't know if you guys want to listen. You're welcome to stay. I do curse and get not pleasant. So I was trying to be good while you guys were on, but it's going to get bad, just so you know. So you're welcome to stay. You don't have to. I won't be insulted if you go. I'm just warning you that I'm going to read a little bit of my book. I'm going to talk about a couple things real quick before I do that. So, and I do curse a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on and giving us a chance to put the name, CASA out there so that maybe it'll spread some awareness and people will be interested in looking into it to volunteer as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
To you.
Thank you both for doing this.
Very
And I think you'll both be very good at it. I believe that. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to stay on and listen.
Oh,
I did
you're
okay.
great, huh? All right. So I don't know if anybody's still here with us, but I can't see. My vision sucks. I'm just falling apart. But I blame Chris Gregor for my vision too. Just why not, right? So most of you know that Chris has been in state prison for a little over a year, I guess. He was in county jail a year prior. He is filing an appeal. He's had several extensions, though, because he doesn't have his brief in yet. He has an attorney, and they keep asking for an extension, which is granted. So me being typical me with a dirty mouth, I said to the Attorney General on Thursday, what the fuck do you mean another extension? Corey didn't get an extension. Why is he getting all this time? And, you can't make me understand it. And I'm told that this is just the process and these things take time. And there's no limit to how many extensions somebody can ask for. So, yeah, I'm pissed off about that. So that's that. And, Chris is currently in New Jersey State Prison in Trenton. He's now known as SBI number 000582757G. That's Chris's new name in state prison. He's a number with a letter at the end. I refer to him as many other things, but that's where he is. If anybody wants to be a pen pal or anything, I'm sure he's lonely. If you want to just write and tell him what a piece of shit you think he is, that's okay too. We have on November 29th, it could change, but Law and Crime covered the trial. And so they have a show on Law and Crime. It's called Prime Crime, and it's with Jesse Weber. I don't know him very well, but they came out and interviewed us, and they're doing a 2-hour special November 29th about Corey's story. So they interviewed Mario Gallucci, Chris's defense attorney, and Detective Dennis Mitchell, who was the lead detective in Corey's case, who I think should be that man. I'm telling you, he is a saint. Dennis Mitchell should have been promoted to something bigger and better because he was amazing. I could say anything I wanted to him, and I did during the investigation. And he didn't flinch. He's like, okay, yeah, all right, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow or something. Like, he just, such a professional. And, he spent so many hours and weeks and years away from his own family getting justice for Corey. And I say getting justice. I don't feel that there was any justice, but it's not Dennis Mitchell's fault. It's not the prosecutor's fault. It's just the court system. My justice would have been for Chris to die the same way that Corey did. And hopefully I would have been able to watch. That would have been justice for me. I would feel a little bit better, wouldn't bring Corey back, but I would feel better knowing that he took his last breath with nobody around, just like Corey did. But unfortunately, in New Jersey, we're not allowed to do that. We don't believe in the death penalty. So that's not going to happen. So that's pretty much all I've got to say about all that. I said that I would let people know about the appeal process. So that's what I'm doing. I don't have much information except he's gotten another extension, December 2nd. Maybe he'll have a brief by then. Maybe not. He'll probably get another extension. I wouldn't be surprised because, you know, the criminals have all the rights and the victims have none. But so with that being said, I don't know if anybody in the chat has any questions or if anybody else has any questions, but if not, I'm going to read a little bit of my book that I would have published my book 6 months ago, but I kept being told that because of the appeal, I probably shouldn't. The Attorney General told me on Thursday that there's no reason for them to tell me not to publish my book. I reached out to Bree's attorney who's handling the civil suit against DCP&P, and he has not gotten back to me. So I don't have much patience anymore. So I'm assuming that there's no reason why I can't publish my book, because if there was, Chris Conrad would have gotten back to me and told me not to publish my book, right? And he hasn't told me that. So I'm assuming it's okay to publish. But until I publish, I'm going to read a little bit to you guys. And the very beginning of it has absolutely nothing to do with Corey, but I felt like I had to start from way back when, before I started with this part. But let me get a drink and I'm going to start reading. So, and I can't see well, so I have to put my nose in my phone and all that. So the title of the book is Can You Hear Me Now? Because Corey wasn't heard and he knew that, and he used to say that nobody could hear him. So that's the title of the book and this channel, as you know. So I start out, if you purchased my book, then you know it's about the death of my grandson, Corey Travis Mitchell, and those who failed him. DCP&P, family court judges, the Gregors, and several law enforcement agencies, to name a few. I promise I'll get to that part of the story, but wanted you all to get to know me, Vito, Jimmy, Gino, Brianna, and Nikki first. If you had the opportunity to meet me during the trial or at any of the memorials or other gatherings we've had, then you know I'm very blunt. I curse, I say what's on my mind, and I tell Corey's story 100% based on the facts, and I always provide documentation to back up my account of what happened. I'm Rebecca Loudon Mitchell. I'm Corey's Gima, and this is my story, Corey's story in my words. This story is how I remember it. I lived it. Please note, this book may not be suitable for anyone under the age of 18, and those offended by profanity or graphic photos of abuse. I've used real names, and that's going to upset a lot of people, but I can't allow that to silence me. I had to stay silent during the trial, and now it's my time to tell Corey's story. I'm going to start in 2013. Life is good today. Living in Manalapan, New Jersey, Gino agreed to go to rehab. He's on a plane heading to the watershed in Boynton Beach, Florida. I don't have to worry now, right? Jimmy is typical Jimmy, never an ounce of trouble from him. He goes to work, comes home, helps around the house. My baby Nikki is quiet but fierce. And then there's Brianna. Where do I start? Well, I guess if you want to know, and if you want to understand this whole nightmare, I should start back around 1992. Not that it was a nightmare back then, but that's when I met my husband, Brianna's father. I was in an abusive relationship back then, and the guy that I was in the relationship with is in the chat. I don't know if he's still here, but that's okay. He's accepted what he's done, and we've moved forward. Anyway, he was nuts. It started out with yelling at me and telling me I looked like shit, making me feel unworthy of his love, cheating. We were in the midst of yet another argument, and I decided to go to our local bar, Doc's Corner Tavern, where we went several times a week together. I was sitting at the bar talking to our regular bartender, Robin, and he informed me that I had a stalker. It was my boyfriend, and he was looking in the window, watching me. I didn't get too concerned about it. I left the bar after about an hour. I walked there. It was only a 5-minute walk. I lived in Jamesburg my whole life and never feared walking alone at night. I was about 25 feet from the door of the bar when out of nowhere, I heard the revving engine and caught a glimpse of a teal-colored Cadillac just before it hit me. Yes, the boyfriend struck me with his car. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember going to the hospital. I also remember the nurse asking me how far along I was. Can you imagine my shock? I was in an abusive relationship and pregnant, and he just ran me over with his car. The assault was not seen by anyone, and I didn't tell on him. I said I didn't see the car or person who hit me. My injury was not bad, just a few scrapes. And yes, I went back to him for a while. His father, whom I still speak to and call Dad, and his stepmom, Loretta, who passed, took my side and told me I had to break up with him before he kills me. His grandmother came to visit from Florida, and she insisted I go home with her for a while before he killed me. His whole family thought he was capable. So now it's about April of 1992. I go to Florida with Grandma Valrosa. She tells me we were invited to her friend Rose's house for Easter. We went there, and the first thing I noticed walking up the driveway was the shiny BMW. We walk in, and there were several people there. I took notice of 2 guys. Rocco had the bluest eyes, and I kind of thought maybe he would be just what I needed to forget about my crazy ex, the Cadillac man. The second guy had jet black hair and big brown eyes. This was Vito. It was his BMW in the driveway. And talking to Vito, I learned he had been in the Army, infantry, which was very impressive. He seemed to have a good head on his shoulders, and I felt he was definitely going to be husband material. I never really thought much about marriage until I met Vito. I guess I should have started this story in 1986, a little further back. That's the year I gave birth to my first son, Jimmy. Remember I mentioned him earlier? I was 14 when I met Jimmy's father. This part of my life almost mirrors what happened to Brianna when she was 16, except I wasn't drugged or raped. I was just young and naive. I won't mention Jimmy's father's name because he's not worthy of being mentioned in my story. He was a legal adult at the time of conception, and don't get me wrong, I was willing, but he told me I couldn't get pregnant because it was my first time, and I believed him. I had no clue, and we didn't have Google back then. I found out I was pregnant, and by this time, I'm dating my next door neighbor, Jimmy. So everyone assumed that Jimmy was the father of my unborn baby, and that's what I went with. You see, Jimmy's biological father wanted nothing to do with him or his baby. It didn't fit into his lifestyle. Does it sound familiar? He stopped coming around as soon as I told him I was pregnant and then started telling me to get an abortion. I might have done that, except I hadn't told my mom I was pregnant yet. And needless to say, my boyfriend Jimmy assumed the role of dad-to-be at 16 years old. I was 14. My mom finally confronted me about being pregnant, as she had so many times, and I denied it. This time, she took me to the doctor. The doctor was an older man, and I felt so uncomfortable. Dr. Schwartz was very nice to me, and he made me feel a bit more comfortable. He started to examine me, and he looked over and said to my mom, "She has the breasts of a pregnant woman." I guess I didn't know what that meant back then, but I kind of do now. The pregnancy was confirmed, and I was given a due date of March 22nd. Well, that date wasn't going to work. You see, that date meant that my current boyfriend couldn't be the father, and people would figure that out. Life went on, and I went into labor on March 13th. I wasn't sure what was happening. My mom and my sister-in-law, Marilyn, accompanied me to the hospital. Marilyn came into delivery with me. My baby boy was born after a few pushes. He was 7 pounds, 1 ounce, and his head was odd-shaped, but we were reassured his head would take shape. It was due to a narrow birth canal. I named him Robert James Loudon. I remember being very hungry after giving birth. When I was taken into my room, I remember getting a dinner tray delivered. It was a huge hamburger and cantaloupe and honeydew melon, which I'd never eaten before that day, but now I love both. I guess I was so hungry after giving birth, I probably would have eaten anything. My boyfriend wasn't present. He was already figuring out the baby definitely wasn't his. He was hopeful that he was the father, but we knew it wasn't possible. When he finally came up to the hospital later that day with his mom, they decided that Jimmy was the father and they would help care for the baby. They also changed my son's name to James Daniel Bergen Jr. I'll move this story along. I know you want to get to the part about Corey, and I will get there, I promise. Now back to Vito. After Easter dinner at Rosa's, Vito's mother's house, Rosa called Grandma Valrosa the next day, inquiring about some girl who had met Vito at Grandma Valrosa's late husband's funeral a few months earlier. Grandma told her that that girl was living with her current boyfriend, but I was available and single. So Vito came to Grandma's house the next night, and the three of us played cards. And then Grandma went to bed, and Vito and I talked for hours that night. He wasn't concerned that I'd had a child, and I thought he would be good for me and for Jimmy. We knew we were going to be together, but I was going back home to New Jersey soon. How would this work? We tried the long-distance relationship for a few weeks, and then I ended up moving to Florida. My mom didn't think I should uproot Jimmy right away. He only had less than 2 months before the school year ended, so I left him at home in New Jersey with my mom and dad until school ended. Jimmy came to Florida and things were good. And on January 17th, 1993, Vito and I were married. We had planned to marry on January 16th and had everything scheduled, but Vito's mom had tickets to the theater in Jupiter, Florida, and we had to change our date. We'll talk more about Rosa later, maybe. In March of 93, we welcomed Gino into the world. Vito was happy to have a son, his own son. I mean, he had Jimmy, but Jimmy wasn't his biological son. Vito was a smart guy. He had a degree in IT. I knew he could make a great living in New Jersey. Florida wages were nothing compared to New Jersey and New York. I talked Vito into moving to New Jersey. His family wasn't happy. Did I mention Rosa didn't like me? Or at least it seemed that way. So we moved to New Jersey, and Vito gets a job in IT for a small company in East Brunswick. The pay was okay, but we knew he could do better, and he did. He went on to work for several big companies. I thought when he landed a job for American Standard that we were definitely living the dream. It gets better. I've never heard of the term headhunter, but apparently in the corporate world, that's what they call people who find you these amazing jobs. Gail, the headhunter, found Vito an amazing position in New York City. She actually found him several opportunities, but he chose to take a position with Lord Abbott and Company. We bought our first home. It was 1997, 1998. By this time, we had Jimmy, Gino, Brianna, and Nikki was due to arrive soon. My mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in April of 98. I was taking her for radiation treatments several times a week. It was so upsetting to see her so weak. Nikki was born on October 21st, 1998. My mother came to stay with me for what would be the last days of her life in February of 99. My dad had a stroke while my mom was in the hospital at some point, and he just couldn't take care of her. The night before she passed, she had enough energy to sit downstairs with me, Vito, and the kids. My mom was a smoker, and I didn't allow smoking in my house. But that night, I let my mom smoke her non-filtered Camel by the fireplace. She asked if we could get Chinese food for dinner that night, something we had done so often when I lived at home. She even insisted on going with me to pick it up. She ate very little, and after dinner, she asked me to call her sister Helen, who lived in Kentucky. They stayed on the phone for a long time. The next day, I went to check on my mom. She was staying in Brianna and Nikki's room. She was in bad shape. I called my brother, and we decided to call an ambulance. I called my mother's oncologist, and I told him she was on her way to the hospital. And he told me that it was pointless and that she was dying and there was nothing he could do. I told him that she was coming anyway because I couldn't stand the thought of her dying in my house. She passed away later that night at the hospital, surrounded by family. I was late getting there because my sister-in-law asked me to pick her up. So by the time we got there, she was already gone. I remember my brother Bruce getting a bad nosebleed while we were at the hospital at my mom's bedside, and he had to go downstairs to the ER. Anyway, life goes on for the living after a loved one dies. We expect to bury our parents. I just wish I could have had my mom here a little longer. As I said, life goes on somehow. We bought a new house shortly after my mom passed. I remember asking Vito if my mom would know we moved because I wanted her to visit from beyond if that was possible. I got my answer to that question. I got the answer to that question just before we moved. I told you how my mom came to stay with us for the last few days of her life. She stayed in Brianna and Nikki's room. Well, one morning after my mom passed, Brianna told Vito that Nikki, who was 4 months old at the time, woke up during the night. So Vito said that, oh, we didn't hear her crying. And Brianna said, that's because Memel, that's what all of my mom's grandkids called her. Brianna had told Vito that my mom, her grandmother, had come and picked Nikki up from her crib and rocked her back to sleep. We were in disbelief. Vito asked Brianna what the person looked like, and Brianna described my mother, glasses, hair, and everything. And this was about 2 months after my mom had passed. I know she came to see Brianna and Nikki that night. We got over the shock and continued packing for the move. We moved into the new house in April, and in July, the electric went out around the entire town. It was hot and dark, so we decided to go to a hotel. We were in the truck when Vito realized he left his wallet in the house. He went back in and he came running back out to the truck looking as if he'd seen a ghost. And he said, "Your mom's in the house." I thought he'd lost his mind. He said when he went into our bedroom, he could smell my mom's perfume. He said all the bottles of perfume were knocked over except for my mom's. Well, I was happy because I knew that my mom had found out where we moved to, and she did come to visit. I still believe if my mom and Vito's parents were alive today, I probably wouldn't be writing this book because there wouldn't be a Corey story. My kids didn't get to grow up with grandparents. My mom passed when they were very young, and Vito's parents lived several years after my mom, but not nearly as long as they should have. So anyway, my mom visits the new house and life goes on. We moved a few times after that, and I guess my mom got tired of looking for us because I didn't see her again after the perfume incident. I'm going to fast forward a few years because I don't want you guys to get bored with my book. After all, this is Corey's story, and that's why you bought the book. We were now living back in Monroe Township. Life was good. Jimmy was out of school. Gino was in high school, and Brianna and Nikki were in middle school. The girls had lots of friends. They were typical middle school girls. I remember getting a call from one afternoon from Vito telling me that Sal had shot himself. He's dead. Sal was the husband of Vito's niece. They lived in Florida, where most of Vito's family lived. We immediately made arrangements to go to Florida. We packed up Brianna and Nikki. Gino was being looked after by my cousin Debbie, and Jimmy didn't live at home. We go to Florida for this horrible loss of a beautiful man, so young and so much life left, and he chose to end it. His poor wife and kids. I used to wonder how they survived such a horrible life event. But as most of you know, life goes on for the living. This next part of the story is important. This is when things started going bad for Bree. Nothing happened to her physically in Florida, but back in New Jersey, mean girls were plotting. While we were in Florida, all of Bree's cousins, which were all boys, played and talked and just hung out like kids do. Some of Brianna's New Jersey friends got friendly with Brianna's boy cousins and developed crushes. When we got back home a week later, the girls went back to school, and I thought we were back to our normal routine. Brianna wasn't herself. She suddenly didn't want to go to school. She finally told me that her friends and others were saying bad things about her. So remember, I mentioned earlier that Brianna and Nikki and all their cousins in Florida were communicating by phone and MySpace or whatever it was called back then with her friends in New Jersey. So some of Brianna's friends developed crushes on the boy cousins. And when the cousins didn't show an interest, the mean girls made up hateful, sickening rumors about Bree. And they spread around school pretty quickly. Brianna was being bullied by girls that had been in her circle of friends who had spent the night at our house. I tried to do the right thing and report it to the principal, whom I've nicknamed the Bearded Dragon. Not because she was fierce like a dragon, but because she had several hairs in her chin. The Bearded Dragon did nothing to address the bullying. She actually asked Brianna if maybe the rumors were true, and maybe Brianna was jealous of the other girls. The principal, who I thought would fix this, became the bully. Brianna was homeschooled for a few weeks, and while she was safe at home, her younger sister, Nikki, was now the target of the bullying. Fast forward, we took the girls out of Monroe Township School District and enrolled them in St. Bart's in East Brunswick. Brianna was never the same after this bullying nonsense. She wouldn't go out, and nobody came to visit. We had therapists at the house. It was a dark time. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Once we got her to start going out again, she chose different friends. In my opinion, she felt unworthy of being with good, wholesome kids. We ended up moving out of Monroe Township and we moved to Manalapan. The girls went to Manalapan High School where they met some really great kids who they are still friends with today. Shout out to Kylie and Delia, also known as the twins, for always standing by and being there through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Brianna still wasn't 100% herself, but she was going out with friends and going to school. She had a boyfriend, Cody. He was a bit troubled, but I loved him anyway. He would spend some time in and out of county jail for small, stupid crimes. Now here's where Corey's story begins. One weekend, Vito asked me to accompany him on a weekend trip to a drag racing event not too far from home. The girls didn't want to go, and it was decided that my son Jimmy could keep an eye on them. He was in his mid-20s, had a good job, and very responsible. I never left them before and wasn't 100% comfortable, but what could possibly go wrong? Well, I'll tell you. I'm watching our surveillance cameras that first evening, and I see a tall guy, older looking, with Hollister boxer shorts. They were pink, white, and blue, as I remember. He was walking through my upstairs hallway, scratching his nutsack and heading to the bathroom. Was it Cody, Brianna's boyfriend? I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if he came out of Brianna's room or Gino's room. Gino was away in rehab in Florida, so I knew it wasn't him or his friends. I called Jimmy only to find out he got stuck at work. I called Nikki and she was at a friend's house and Brianna wasn't answering her phone. Jimmy got home later and said nobody was in the house, but we packed up anyway and headed home. Brianna denied having anyone in the house, but the cameras don't lie. A few weeks later, Nikki and Brianna's friend Kayla came into my room where Vito and I were packing for a trip. We were leaving the next morning. They told me that Brianna wanted to talk to me outside. Not sure what to expect when I went outside, but Brianna told me that she had gone to Planned Parenthood and she had been on birth control pills for heavy periods, but had difficulty swallowing pills and didn't always take them. So I asked why she was at Planned Parenthood, and she said she was pregnant. Right away, I assumed it was her boyfriend Cody's baby. I asked what her thoughts were, and she said she was keeping her baby. She asked if I would tell her dad. So I went inside and I told Vito that Brianna's pregnant, and right away, he assumed it was her boyfriend's baby. I told him her plan was to keep the baby. And so from that moment on, we said we would help raise the baby and make sure he or she had everything. We went to Ocean City, New Jersey for a trip the next morning with the girls. And we wouldn't let Brianna go on any of the rides due to the pregnancy. Vito's cousin thought we were strange, and it was very strange that we weren't letting Brianna go on rides. And we finally had to tell her about the pregnancy. But she was really cool and laid back, so she never judged us for having a daughter 16 and pregnant. We got home from our trip, and a few days later, I look outside my bedroom window, and there he is, Mr. Hollister boxer shorts himself. Brianna and Kayla are there, and another boy. I made my way out there and introduced myself. Right away, the lies spewed from Chris's mouth. But why lie? He said he was 18 years old and that he lived in South Brunswick. Both lies. I knew the way he spoke that he was a bit more mature than Brianna. I didn't confront him about being in my house. I probably should have, but in all honesty, the damage was already done. But of course, I didn't know that yet. Later that evening, I asked Brianna why he was there and why he was here. And I told her that I felt he was a creep. And she said that he was Kayla's friend, not hers. So that was the end of it. We were preparing for a baby, and that's what we did. Brianna and Nikki and friends would go out to eat and go to Babies R Us. Vito and I would go out to dinner every Friday and go baby shopping, sometimes buying duplicate things, forgetting we already bought it. We were happy, even if our 16-year-old daughter was having a baby. with her somewhat troubled boyfriend, Cody, whom I love dearly to this day. Life went on. We renovated our house in Monroe and moved back from Manalapan before Corey was born. We were busy with renovations, doctor's appointments, and preparing for our first grandchild to be born. We had a beautiful baby shower with family from Florida and New Jersey and all of Brianna and Nikki's friends. Brianna chose a monkey theme for the nursery. By this time, we knew she was having a boy. We would sit around thinking about baby boy names. At first, I thought she'd choose an Italian name, but she decided on Corey. I was kind of stuck on Noah, but Corey was definitely a Corey. It just fit. After the baby shower, we put the nursery together, and now we just needed the baby to come. Brianna was such a cute pregnant girl, so tiny, just a big bump in her stomach. The day Brianna went into labor, we were having a terrible storm. Flooding and power outages were expected. We went to the hospital earlier that day, and the doctor said we should go home. Brianna had not dilated and was not in active labor. So we head home as the rain has already started. Brianna was so irritable, and I felt she was just over being pregnant and just ready to give birth. We go home and prep for this storm. Brianna was very restless. The power goes out, but thankfully we had a generator. The roads were flooded and some were closed. We tried to sleep, and Brianna came into my room saying she felt like she had to poop. She went into my bathroom, and I told her not to push, that she was probably in labor. I was freaking out knowing the roads were closed and help may not be able to get to us. This next part I'm about to tell you may make you laugh. At the time, I was scared beyond belief, but now I can laugh about it. I called 911 and I tell the dispatcher my daughter is in labor and she's on the toilet. So the dispatcher yells at me, "Get her off the toilet." So I yell at Brianna, "Get off the toilet." So the dispatcher tells me to put her on the bed. So I tell Bree, "Get on my bed," which she does. Then the dispatcher says to me, "Pull her pants down." So I say to Bree, "Pull your pants down," to which Bree replies, "No way." So I say to dispatch, "She said no," to which dispatcher says, "Pull her pants down now." So we go back and forth for a minute or two, and Vito comes up the stairs with the EMTs. I thought, thank God, help has arrived. We get Bree in the ambulance, and they tell us we have to go to a nearby hospital, but I had her doctor on the phone, and he told them she needed to get to St. Peter's in New Brunswick. Bree could feel Corey's head. The young EMT was being instructed by our obstetrician on the phone on what to do, but Bree wasn't having it, and I think the kid was relieved. Vito and Nikki were following in the ambulance, but the roads were horrible. We get to the hospital, and Corey was born within minutes. Vito and Nikki hadn't even parked the car. Corey Travis Michelow was born on May 1st, 2014 at 4:01 a.m., weighing 7 pounds, 5 ounces. When the nurse put him in my arms, I was in love. I told Corey, I was his grandma, and I would love and protect him forever. We know that the last part didn't happen. Vito and Nikki came into the room as Bree was holding Corey, and we all cried together. We were so happy and so in love. This love and happiness would be short-lived, as you all know the story. Cody, Brianna's boyfriend, made it to the hospital that evening, but when it came time to sign the birth certificate, he was nowhere to be found. I think Cody knew he wasn't Corey's father. He'd been in jail for a brief time and apparently did the math. So there is no father named on Corey's birth certificate, even to this day. It's sad, but considering who his father is, it's best he's not named. We bring Bree and Corey home from the hospital. Bree's friend, Taylor B., and Nikki were like mother hens. They helped Bree take care of Corey. The evening we got home from the hospital, it was probably close to 10 o'clock. I heard someone at the door, and I go downstairs to see Mr. Hollister boxer shorts, Chris himself, sitting in my living room. And that's where I'm going to stop. I don't want to read anymore. I'm going to save it. But so yeah, Chris came to my house the day Brianna got home from the hospital after giving birth to Corey. And if any of you watched Trial, you'll know that Chris said he didn't know that he was Corey's father until Corey was 5. And we all know that's bullshit. So yeah, so that's where I'm going to end the book. And going to try to get it out there really soon now that I know that I can. It's going to piss a lot of people off, mainly the Gregors, because they don't want you to know the truth. And unfortunately, a lot of the truth didn't come into the courtroom. But I do tell the whole story in my book. And I just hope everybody reads it. I just hope everybody reads it. I know David Gregor is supposed to come on somewhere, somehow tell his truth. I'm waiting for that moment. I'd love to hear what he thinks happened. But that's where I'm at. As you can see, I'm still not okay. Never will be. You don't move on from this. You don't. Corey wasn't sick. He didn't get hit by a car. He was killed by Chris Gregor. And you can't forget that. You can't forgive it. I know I've seen so many trials where victims stand up and make an impact statement saying, that they forgive the person that killed their child or someone. I don't know how anybody can ever forgive anyone. I never will. It's never going to happen for me. I get more angry each day that passes. It doesn't get any easier. But that's just me. So anyway, that's it. Just wanted to do this live, give everybody an update. I wanted to have Amy and Karen on because they have taken on this very important role as it's a volunteer position that they've both taken on to help kids that are in foster care. I'm hoping to meet with somebody from the CASA office or, and inquire about how we can have this in place before a child gets to foster care, but who knows, we're probably way behind. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but you never know. Doesn't hurt to ask, right? But thank you everybody who watched and those who will watch later and tomorrow. I know I go on a lot, and I know the book probably didn't interest a lot of you the very beginning, but I felt that's where I needed to start Corey's story. So I hope you'll tune back in for my next live. I hope you'll look for my book. I'll let you know when it's out. I hope you guys tune in to Law and Crime on November 29th to watch the 2-hour episode about Corey's story. Chris's defense attorney, Mario Gallucci, was interviewed for this episode, and so was Detective Dennis Mitchell. So I'm very curious to see what both of them had to say. Anyway, until next time, thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate all your love and support. Everyone have a good night. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate you sticking through the end of this and for currently and always being here. And I'm just so happy I met you. I just wish it wasn't under the circumstances, but I'm glad that we met.
I'm glad we met too.
You're family to me. You're very special. So thank you.
And I loved hearing your book, and I can't wait to read the whole thing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.